All right, for today's tutorial, we're going to be doing a beach bag with mesh. We're also going to learn about French seams during this tutorial, which will be a really nice technique to learn to use for future projects. For our supplies, we need a 1/2 yard of vinyl mesh, and we need 5/8 yard of fabric. I personally love using batik fabrics, but any kind of fabric here will work. You'll need a 7-inch zipper and 3 2/3 yard of webbing. All right, to get started, we're going to cut the mesh in half. This will make them approximately 18 inches by 18 inches. All right, after we cut the mesh in half, you're going to cut out 2 corners from each section of mesh that is 2.5 inches square. And then from the fabric, we're going to cut an 8-inch strip. With the 8-inch strip, we're going to do one that's 8 inches by 18 inches and one that's 8 inches by 3 inches. With the rest of the fabric, we're going to have a 12-inch strip of fabric. When we have the 12-inch strip of fabric, we are going to cut that in half to cover the top of each side of the bag. To install the zipper, begin by placing the zipper face down on one of the 8-inch strips of fabric. With the zipper foot installed, begin with the zipper open for easier sewing. As you get closer to the zipper pull, stop the machine with the needle down, lift the zipper sewing foot, pull the zipper past the foot, and then continue sewing. Attach the second strip of 8-inch fabric to the other side of the zipper. This will complete the zipper for the pocket. All right, now use the iron to press the fabric next to the zipper so it lays flat for the front of the pocket. Fold the pocket in half and press. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay the 12-inch fabric over the mesh. Measure 5 inches from the top of the mesh and pin the fabric. And then we're going to fold over the fabric and align it with the seam from the other side. I like to gently press the fabric after this, but be careful not to touch the mesh. Align the pocket in the center of the mesh, and I use the grid below me to help align the pocket evenly. Then I pin the fabric in place and sew along the edge. To prevent shifting, make sure you pin the pocket down. Now we're going to trim the excess fabric from the mesh sides. Use the mesh to guide you. Align the mesh with the wrong sides together. This is contrary to a normal seam, but you're going to have to trust me here. Sew the bottom of the bag using a narrow seam allowance. Now, open the seam and use your fingers to press the mesh open. You're going to flip the mesh so that the right sides are now together and use your fingers again to press flat. Now use a larger seam allowance to enclose the rough edges of your seam. Now you'll have less snags that'll occur on the bottom of the bag. When it comes to installing the webbing, I like to burn the edges of my webbing to prevent any fraying. All right, find the middle of your webbing and mark it with a pin, and then place the center of the webbing along the bottom seam of your mesh. Use a ruler to ensure the mesh is in the center and even along the bag. Usually there will be about 5 inches between the edges of the webbing and the edge of the bag. Pin well around the top of the webbing and around the bag to prevent shifting. Next, you will sew along both edges of the webbing and sew close to the edge of the webbing. I like to backstitch several times along the top of the webbing to support the handle. Align the mesh with the wrong sides together. Again, this is contrary to a normal seam, but this is part of the French seam. As with the bottom of the bag, sew a narrow seam on both sides. Then flip the bag inside out and sew a wider seam. Here, you can see how the raw edges are enclosed. The other side has not yet been sewn, and you can see the raw edges. I have sewn 2 seams along both edges of the bag. Now we will make our boxed corners of the bag. This will be the only exposed raw edges inside the bag. Press the corners together and align the side seams and bottom seam. I like to sew this twice to add additional strength. Now flip your bag, and trust me, I know this is easier said than done. Thanks so much for making this beach bag with me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learning about how to enclose your raw edges with a French seam. If you'd like to see more videos like this one in the future, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you can see what I'm up to in the future.